Welcome everyone. I am glad to be back with another live stream and an exciting contest to talk about. We got a lot of amazing submissions as always. You can see some of them on my screen. We did a review of all of these with the client, and this is the first time that we've been doing this contest that we actually work for a real client. So this is not a brief that we created. This is actually a brief by a real client, and whoever decided to take part probably knows the details, but I wanted to just give a little bit of background information on the contest itself before we jump into reviewing the designs. And we will be doing things a little bit differently to the previous reviews, because this time I will also do a little bit of a demo in Illustrator and maybe a couple of other tools. Based on the client's feedback, I want to show and share a couple of techniques that could be useful for anyone who took part in this contest. And so first of all, I just wanted to double check whether the sound and the screen and everything is working okay. So let me just know in the chat if you can hear me, see me clearly, and the connection is good, hopefully. And then also let me know where are you joining us from if you haven't been on these streams before. Also, if you are a returning viewer or a contestant, also feel free to let us know where you are joining from. Yeah, it seems fine. Thank you, Shumi. And Keijo, we are happy to have you in our community. I see a couple of familiar names as well. It's great to have you all here. So, like I mentioned, this contest was based on the brief that we got from the client, who wants to create a kitchen product range focusing on these parchment papers, aluminum foils, plastic wraps. These are the type of things that you probably are familiar with. So I have a few of these boxes here in my hand as well. I'm sure you've seen these before, and most likely you use them as well before. They are not the most exciting products to work on, and also they are quite challenging because of their format. So they are very long but narrow. So the actual surface, the surface that you use for the design, is very narrow. So to fit information on it, like here you can see an example, it's not the easiest format to work with. Here's another one as well I'm holding in my hand. It has quite a lot of information on it. I don't know how much you can see of this. Again, I'll try to hold it in a way that you can see. It's possible to fit a fair amount of information on them, but not an easy format to work with. So when whoever designed banners, web banners, for instance, probably the hardest one to work on are the either very tall, like vertical format, or these very narrow, very wide but short banners as well, when the aspect ratio is not close to, let's say, a square format or a rectangular format, but more like either skyscraper or this panoramic format that is hard to work with. So this is a format that we can see here. This is based on a template that was provided by the manufacturer that the client is working with, and of course it's a die line that includes all the sides of the packaging for these products. But this is a series of products, so it's not just a single product. It's actually 4 products, and they need to look like they are they are obviously connected and they are the same brand, but they also have to be easy to differentiate. So whoever buys these products will be able to quickly identify the specific product that they need. So some of these designs here already show the variation quite well. So we have, once again, the aluminum foil, the brown unbleached parchment paper, plastic wrap, and the white parchment paper. And in the brief, we had all the information necessary for the copy that needs to go on these designs, and also the color palette. So if I just bring up the, actually I probably won't go back to the original brief at this point. I don't think it's necessary. What I wanted to show instead is that we got a good variety of designs, and there was actually also one important thing I wanted to mention, that there were quite a lot of specific points that were mentioned in the brief that were quite important, and these are all stylistic requirements. The first thing, that the client wanted to have a neon font, or the text, the main text, to be created like a neon light. And there's a few of the designs here that does that really well, like Haynes did a good example where the text glows, but it's not really looking like a neon font. The only one that looks more like an actual neon light is probably Janelle's plastic wrap, also parchment paper and aluminum foil. The parchment paper, strangely, it's not following the same style. Eklas, you also did something that could look like a neon, maybe a little bit more complex, using more lines, but this is also quite a cool take on the same thing. And then this one by Tina also looks like an actual neon light. Robin did it also quite well. And Saida, I'm gonna open up her PDF soon. She did like 3 directions. I think one of them was the neon jungle direction, where she utilized the neon light more dominantly. But yeah, so that was one of the important aspects, that neon light used for the product names. Then the second important part of the brief was that the client wanted to showcase like a reptilian pattern, like the scaly pattern of a reptile. It wasn't specified exactly what it needs to be. It can be a bit more abstract, but that reptilian scale is also a very important aspect. And we can see that utilized more, make it like really obvious, showing reptiles here in this design, or a bit more illustrative versions of them, where it's literally just these dots making up the outline or silhouettes of the animals. And then we have also here, in case of Tina's work, we have it more subtle in the background. So if I zoom a little bit even closer, or maybe double click on this, we can see how the neon light is revealing that reptilian pattern, or like scaly pattern in the background. So these are all good examples, showcasing the 2 important stylistic requirements that the client asked for. Now, besides this, there was also additional requirements. Probably the third important aspect was that because it's from Ecuador, or the brand is based on Quito, the capital city of Ecuador, and so this whole style is connected to the Amazon rainforest as well. The client also mentioned that it would be nice to have some hints to the tribal communities of the Amazon rainforest, and perhaps some context as well provided for them, but also like some motifs or design elements that could be incorporated. But those were more like secondary or tertiary requirements, so they were not the main requirement. And it may have not been 100% clear what's the priorities for the client in the beginning. So that's why we will see quite a big variety and range of different designs amongst the entries. But we can see that the important things are there, visible in most of them. So we will see the neon light, and we will see the scaly patterns on most of them. So that's a good thing. However, one other very important aspect was that the client wanted to use vibrant colors for this packaging. And again, this wasn't clear in the brief originally, but the client actually doesn't like black backgrounds. Now, this is again probably my fault that I didn't ask the client about this, and we didn't specify this in the brief. So many of the entries that we got actually is utilizing black or very dark background, while the client actually prefers things more like these colors that we can see here on Eli's design, or even more like the ones on Katerina's. So he said these very like fluorescent, bright, vivid color backgrounds is what he likes. So instead of using the colors that he specified in the brief originally to be used on the text and the titles, what he imagined is that these colors would be used on the background, and the text on it would be a neon light, but it can be simply just white light. So that doesn't have to be the same color. However, that's also possible to have a similar color on the same background, but these things were not clear in the brief. So it's no one's fault. It's not the contestants' fault, because it was left for everyone's interpretation, how they think about the colors and how they utilize the colors. But this became more like an issue once the client saw all the entries and how most of them had this very dark background. And also myself, when I looked at the original brief, I thought that actually, like neon lights, it would make sense for them to be on darker backgrounds, because that's where the neon light really works well. However, of course, there's ways of making it work with brighter backgrounds, especially when the neon light itself, the light source itself, is white. That will still stand out on vibrant backgrounds. So, yes, I think the main reason why it was misleading is because of that example or template that I added, which was simply just to show how to create a neon effect that was on black background, and that probably was the reason it was like picked up by many of the contestants, and that's why we ended up having so many black backgrounds. So we can consider that my fault, and I apologize for anyone who feels like that's not fair, or it's not the way it should have been. And without going any further, the most important thing I want to mention here, so if anyone doesn't have more time to take part here in the live session, obviously you can watch this later if you have time. But most important thing to mention is that we are not going to close this contest today. It's going to continue because we will provide the feedback for many of the designs that we got. I'm going to provide the feedback myself, but also obviously I had a long discussion with the client. And then we will keep the contest running for another 10 days. We will specify exactly the deadline for the final submissions. The same link that we have on the website will stay active, so the same form can be used, and you can resubmit your work. Or if you haven't started this contest yet, if you are just interested to join now, it's still not late to join. You will have an additional information provided to you today. But what we would like to see is, we hope that many of those who took part here will be able to refine their designs. I don't think it would require a lot of additional work. It's more really just refinement. And I think with the feedback from the client, many of the contestants who already took part will be able to get really like close to what the client had in mind, the original vision he had. So this is going to be a 2-round contest. Again, it's a first. We haven't had this before, But this is actually a very typical way you would work with a client. It's very rare that you, or any, even a very, very like experienced and talented designer might have to go several rounds until the client is happy. And it's not because the client is fussy, it's simply because the client has a very particular vision, and maybe the brief wasn't put together properly, or there wasn't enough information for the designers to get there in the first round. Just as an example, when I worked once on a licensing project in a creative studio for Disney, we were putting together a guide for, I think it was the one for Cars, Pixar Cars. I remember there was probably around 50 revisions, so 50 rounds of feedback, and each time we created a new guide, updated everything. So yeah, there was a lot of back and forth, and it wasn't because the client wasn't happy, but there were just lots of new ideas coming up each time we submitted something, and it just kept going and going like that. It can be frustrating to keep working on the same thing, of course, but the reason I'm saying this is because revisions and stages in a design work is part of the job. That's almost always going to be the case. Like I said, I very rarely, when you work with a client, you would be able to nail things straight away. So this is a great demonstration of a real design workflow. So we are doing this revision. So we are entering the second stage now, and it's a good learning curve for all of us to go through this. Now, let me, like I mentioned, this time I'm not going to review every design in great detail. Instead, I'm going to highlight the things that the client mentioned that feels like is lacking in the current designs or were not followed correctly. And then I am going to do a quick demo in Adobe Illustrator to showcase a technique that could be useful for everyone to utilize. Sorry. So the first thing that the client said is that the scaly pattern has to be dominant. That has to be very recognizable, but it has to obviously be incorporated in a way that it won't affect legibility. So without reducing legibility, it has to be very dominant. And a good example of this was Marta's work, where the patterns that are used are really, really like powerful and really get the center stage. However, the text is still legible. Maybe apart from the logo, can be a little bit hard to read in certain parts, even though it has that white like inverted design. It might be a little bit tricky to read with some of these patterns, but the most important part of the text, of course, is still visible. And I quite like how these backdrops are integrated into the pattern a bit. That's quite nice. So that's a nice touch there. I'm just going to bring up my annotation tool so I can just highlight these sections. So I'm talking about this part here. Also like the way the frog's legs are coming in front, and also here further down we have another little detail that comes in front of it. So even though there is a backdrop for the text, it's still possible to integrate it into the design. Now, so that's one of the things that the client mentioned. And by the way, this client feedback, I'm going to include it in the original brief, and I'm going to add a little bit more information there for anyone who wants to join this contest. Will have a clearer direction, or anyone who is updating their designs will also have a clear direction of what to improve and how to resubmit their work. Now, the other thing was not to use black background. So this is a very important one. Don't use black background or very dark backgrounds. The client wants to have vibrant colors or gradients as the background. And in the original brief, it was specified what colors he liked, these neon bright colors, or fluorescent colors, so these really vibrant colors like on these designs, or actually these are also good colors what we see on Saide's work. That's these very bright cyan, magenta, green, and red. These are the colors that the client would prefer to have as the backdrop for the packaging. So what does that mean? That means that the pattern, the scaly pattern that you would add on top of this colorful background will either have to be black or it will have to be dark, because then on top of everything there will have to be white text. So the text for the names of the products will have to be the neon style. So that has to look like an actual neon light, not just simply glowing text, but an actual text made to look like it's neon lights. And this is also very important, and it's also here specified. So white neon font for product title, not for the logo Keto. So the brand name Keto doesn't have to be made out of neon lights. It can be simply written in a normal text. However, it can still have a glow on it if it makes sense for the backdrop. But yeah, so it's important that the neon has to be applied on the product titles. Okay, I'll just put an S here because it's for all the products, applies to all of them. And then for the smaller text, it's okay to have backdrop on them. So it's, for instance, this one here, this 200 square feet. Again, it doesn't have to be a boring box. It can have a bit of design element to it. Or again, the way the logo has that backdrop here to make it stand out. These are all good and acceptable techniques to make sure that the text will stand out. Okay, and then let's see what else was there. Oh yes, and no food photography. That's a preference again that wasn't defined in the original brief, but after seeing the entries, the client decided that although some of them could work nicely, like he said, Eli did a good job incorporating the food photography, but he wants to stay away from this. So he wants to keep it more abstract and illustrative, the designs. And of course, it's also very important to mention that this applies to pretty much all the projects you would do for a client, that if you are using any stock assets, you have to specify that when you submit your work. If you used any licensed asset, you have to mention that these are the assets that you used, even if it's completely royalty free. So you still have to mention that you used a font. This is the source of the font. This is what I used, and it's royalty free, and it can be used in for commercial purposes. So don't end up using things that cannot be licensed. That's important. If you just find an image online, obviously it should be self-explanatory. That doesn't mean that you can use it in a work for a client, because these designs will go for they will be used for manufacturing, distributed. So they have to, anything that is used in the designs will have to be either licensed or royalty free or created by you. Now, when it comes to generative AI, that's a more vague territory, and I feel like there's a couple of examples here, like Michelle's design, the lizards and frog, and these illustrations. I have a feeling they were created with AI. Now, in case of generative AI, like I said, it's a more complex question. The problem with these is that they cannot be licensed. I mean, they cannot be copyrighted. So there is no way to copyright an AI image at the moment. The client said that he doesn't mind if there are some generated details for smaller elements, but definitely don't use generative AI for like dominant details and dominant elements, like let's say anything that would be part of the logo or part of the main branding shouldn't be generated. But I don't think anyone would try to generate the logo itself or parts of the logo. So if you are using like a tribal motif for the logo, don't use AI for that. Try to come up with something on your own, or use a bit of research, look for tribal details, and then come up with something unique based on that. So hopefully that makes sense so far, what I went through here. So that was actually the full list of the client's feedback. So these are the main points the client made. Now, based on this, if I just go through some of these designs, let me just go through quickly in the order we have them here. So Eli, and I'm just going to show you Eli's PDF, because of course we have some really nice presentations. Eli did a really nice job putting it together. I like when I see all the designs straight away on the first page. That's always like a good idea to do. Then we have the rationale, a bit of research on it. Actually, we see some nice mock-ups and close-ups of these designs. We see how they would look in the environment, kitchen environment, and it's a very nice presentation. But yes, so with Eli's work, although the client liked it, it was one of the highlighted designs that he picked when we talked through all the designs. The client said that there was it's nice because it's bright and colorful, but it doesn't have the neon aesthetic on the product titles. And it also has obviously the food photography. So once those two things are fixed, and also actually the scaly pattern is not that obvious. It's there in the background but very vague, so that needs to be a little bit more obvious. But then with those changes, this is already on the right track. And he said that he likes this font, but he would prefer to see it in a neon format. And I'm going to show you exactly how you can turn any font into a neon design fairly quickly and easily in Illustrator. So this font was also good by Michel, and this could work also for a neon style, but currently it just has a subtle glow on it. It doesn't actually look like a neon light, like a physical light. And then again, the client said that although these reptiles, they look nice, he didn't want it to be so obvious, like actually showing the animals. He prefers just to show a more abstract pattern in the background that can be interpreted in different ways, but essentially instead of being so obvious, that would be more interesting, just the texture itself. He likes the texture more than to show the animals. So for instance, in this case, there's some really nice textures on these lizard and the frog, and they are varied enough that each of these products could look different if they are utilized more as a pattern in the background. Again, this is something I'm going to demonstrate how to do properly. So if you're not familiar with techniques how to do that, don't worry, because I'm going to show you a quick demo. Okay, and then again, let me just show the PDF here. So we obviously have some mock-ups of how these products could look like, and there's the die line. That's the actual die line that was used for those who haven't worked on this project. And that's that. And then if I go further, let's look at Katerina's as well. So again, one important aspect of this project is that there's currently no logo created and designed for this brand, Keto. It's something that is, again, it's new. So although it's a packaging design project, as a subtask, and it's not a small task, but you also have to come up with an identity for the brand. it can simply just be text, so the client didn't specify what type of logo would be best. A simple text is fine, he said. However, it's worth exploring different logos as well, and some of the submissions here have some very creative and exciting logos that were generated, many of which the client said looks really good. I'm going to talk about those in a little bit later. But yeah, like for instance, in this case, the client really liked the pattern and also liked the fact that we see the silhouette of the animals and they are like going over the packaging. But he said still he would prefer these to be more used as a like a backdrop than a standout detail that like is so obviously defining an actual creature. So he doesn't want to be so obvious about it, wants to keep it a little bit more abstract. And that's again something I'm going to try to demonstrate because I've done a test together with him, and based on that hopefully it will help everyone. But in terms of having these black dots on a bright colored background, these designs are actually really close to what the client had in mind in terms of aesthetics. Okay, so that's it. I'm just reading the comments at the same time. I can see Haynes, you asked something. I was deleted, but yeah, your design is here as well. I know you submitted after the submission deadline, but I still put your design in here. So yes, so and like Shumi is saying, because we extended this contest, that's why there is still chance to work on it, and any late submissions we still included here. Like Robin as well added, I think was after the deadline, but the work that she created is also added here. By the way, these patterns are really interesting. I'm saying this to Robin. From the PDF, if I go a bit closer, they are very interesting designs, nice and abstract. We can still sort of tell what each of them are. Like this looks more like a turtle shell or tortoise shell, butterfly wing, could be a snake skin, and these looks more like feather. So these artistic, more abstract styles work really nicely, but again, the aim is not to have them on black background. So the background already has to be colorful, so the patterns themselves will have to work really well with that, whatever background color is used on the packaging. Now, I feel like Tina did a really good job on the general style. The logo may be a little bit out of place. It doesn't really connect to the rest of the design, but the font used I really like. This font is really nice. This what is it called? What's the opposite of condensed? I can't remember. A wide font or character style. So this works really well, and it could work really well with the neon style as well. I also liked the way there's both tribal motifs, floral motifs, like referencing the jungle, and also the reptilian pattern in the background. So there's like a nice combination here, and I like how that reptilian pattern is subtle, so it allows the text to be still legible. There's a good contrast between the elements. So in terms of graphic design, this is amongst the best, one of the best in my opinion. However, the client feedback, based on the client feedback, there's still things here that is missing, like the neon style, and the logo the client agreed as well that it didn't really connect with the rest of the design. It probably would have been easier to just keep it simple, or yeah, so less stylized like the way it is right now. In terms of the logo, based on the client's feedback, the designs that we see in Saida's presentation. By the way, Saida always we have an amazing presentation again from Saida, just like last time. I'm always so impressed by these presentations. They are really easy to go through, really nicely tells the story and explains the workflow, and we see the text that was created, and then here are the sketches. Now this is what we looked at with the client, and it's out of these logos, the client said that the ones that are closest to what he had in mind are the following: 18, 14. He also liked this one, 12, and also that symbol that was there. He also liked a simple frame like this, which just has a more subtle referencing of that Aztec or tribal pattern. And yeah, so and again, he mentioned that this could work really well with the neon style. So if the logo is also done in a neon style, or like as a neon light, this outlined design or style for the logo could work well. But yeah, essentially these were the ones that he felt like worked best. I actually really like the one that Saida chose, this one at the bottom, but it's a personal preference. The client actually preferred these other ones more. So I'm not saying to copy Saida, but Saida had these ideas all displayed really nicely, and this is what we could use with the client to go through. So what did he think about the logos that were created? And he said that, yeah, definitely Saida was the closest to find that direction that he likes. But he said it doesn't have to be exactly the way these are created, but these were like the closest direction to what he had in mind. So yeah, again, I just have to say, Saida, your presentation is brilliant, and I love the 3 directions. I always love the research that we have in your presentations. Yeah, so we see the packaging architecture, analysis of the different zones within the design. So it's like educational presentation as well, and that's a good thing. Like, you sometimes have to educate the client about things that maybe they haven't thought about or maybe they haven't looked into yet. So that can be a very good thing to include in the PDF. But in this case, we have the 3 directions, one focusing more on the scales, and again, the client liked this one, but again, it's missing a couple of those important details, like the neon light, the logo being too dominant, and an unnecessary 3D effect on it. It was just not the direction that he was looking for. But the abstract patterns in the background, he said, is close to what he had in mind. Not exactly what he wanted, but it's close. And then here we have the neon style, but he said the font itself doesn't look like it's neon light, this handwritten font. Again, it's important to study how neon lights are created. Of course, a lot of things can be created with neon lights, but this is a little bit too sophisticated for neon light. It has a variable width, lots of like decorative details. It would be very hard to do that well with actual neon lights. And yeah, I love this direction. I think this is the 3rd direction, the woven protection. If I was the client, I would probably go with something like this, but obviously I am just a consultant in this case, so I can't steer anyone, I mean the client in this case, to follow a direction. But I actually really like this, and I find it really clever how it combines the tribal motifs with the skin. So it looks like a snake skin when we look at it, especially when it's put on a shelf and more of these products are stacked on top of each other. It really starts to look like a reptilian or snake skin, and they really stand out from the shelf. So I actually would say that this is probably my favorite design, but again, we have to please the client, not me in this case. So I would recommend Saida to also take on board all the feedback that we discussed here, and I hope you will have time to resubmit at least one direction based on this. And then I think I can probably move on after maybe a few more of these to actually show the demo. So Marta's we already seen, and again, if I just open quickly the PDF, we can see how this looks as a die line and then as mock-ups. These are really nice as well. I'm not too happy about the typography, this like sketched text or a bit hazy text, looks like pencil drawing. I'm not sure about that, and of course the client wants it in neon anyway, so that's just definitely has to change there. Haynes did a good job, but again, maybe the logo is a little bit too abstract, and it's important to again mention the logo doesn't have to look like neon. It can simply just be a white logo. The dominant detail has to be the name of the product, which is set in actual physical neon lights. But yeah, in terms of like textures in the background, Haynes did a really good job. Like this, I know the client really likes stuff like what we can see here. And then, yeah, so in Janelle's work was the only real neon looking text, but the problem with this is it's too thin, the neon lights, and also there's like overlapping or like bent details that come over or go over certain parts of the text twice. That makes it a little bit harder to read, so that's again like not perfect. I'm going to show the aesthetics that the client confirmed that he likes, so we can go through that in more detail now. Okay, so without me going through the rest, there's lots of additional work, by the way, here on the right. I didn't list everything. We got close to 50 entries, I think, yeah, so we just displayed a few of them just to highlight the things that the client would like to see changed. So without any further delay, let me jump into the demo. So this is Illustrator, and it can be done in other applications as well, but in Illustrator it's probably the easiest to do this. So what I'm going to do is, let's just pick one of these titles. Let's say plastic wrap. Okay, so we will do plastic wrap, and I'm going to use a font that I prefer to work with a lot. It's just a great font to demonstrate things on. Heavitas. It's a free font. You can find it on dafont.com. Just search for Heavitas and you can download it. It's free. And what you can do, so any font that you pick, you can turn into neon design fairly quickly and easily, following the next steps. First, I would normally kern the text a bit, especially because of the neon effect. We want to make sure there's enough space between the characters, but this can be done later as well. Alt or Option key, left and right arrows is what you use to do this. And once we have our text, the next thing that you have to do is you press Shift X to swap the fill to stroke color, and then I will press shift click on the stroke size. That goes up to 10 points. That might be a little bit too thick, so I'm going to reduce it down, in this case maybe to 5. I think that's going to be fine. Now, when you are using stroke on text, you want to make sure that you use the outside of the shape, so not the center point, not the inside, but the outside. But what you will notice is that when you try to use these other options, they are not available on text in Illustrator. And so the best thing to do, I mean, there's ways around it to do this. So instead of applying the stroke like this, you can add an additional stroke here in the appearance panel, and then it would work. But what I would recommend normally to do is to already at the beginning, so we just go back a couple of steps, just go back here a couple of steps, already at the beginning outline the text. So instead of having it editable, we will just outline it. So that's going to be Command Shift or Control Shift O. Now that it's outlined, we can do the same thing, Shift X again, and then go up in size to 5 points. But now what we can do, you can see these alignment options become available because it's not text anymore. Now we can easily align the stroke on the outside. And this way, the original silhouette of the text is not compromised. So it's gonna, it looks strange when it looks like this. That's the inside, that's the center, and this is the outside. So this obviously keeps the original characteristic of the font. So the neon shape will be generated outside of the original shape. And then if we want to move the characters around, of course, we can still go in, but instead of kerning, now we have to move them manually. So you would use the move tool or the selection tool and just hold down the shift key to make sure that you are not messing up the vertical alignment of them. So you can see that's why I said we have to make sure we give more space to these characters because of the outside alignment of the stroke. Okay, I'm not gonna spend too much time on this because I just want to mainly show the technique, and then the refinements are something that each of you will have to do anyway. But yeah, so something like that. If you are increasing the distance between the characters, also make sure to always increase the spacing between the words even more, because obviously you don't want them to end up looking like a single word. So the word spacing has to be dramatically increased when you are expanding or increasing tracking in general. Now, once we have this set up, from this point on, it will be actually quite easy, the next couple of steps. So one thing that with neon light is important, that it's interrupted. So there will be parts where it's not completely connected. That adds to the aesthetic or neon aesthetic. So what you can do, obviously, is to delete into these shapes, but because they are still outlines of a filled shape, they are going to create these strange details. So for this to work, we have to have the whole thing selected again. Just going to double click outside of the group, and then we have to expand the appearance. The only issue with expanding appearance could be that you won't be able to easily change the stroke size anymore. So that is something that might be worth keeping as a reference. So what I would normally do is, once I get to this point, I would just duplicate the whole thing down. That way I can always go back to this point here and update the stroke thickness if that's an issue, or if I change my mind and I want to make it thinner or thicker. But now if I select this duplicate and I say expand appearance, now what we will be able to do is to work with the actual physical shapes that were created with that stroke. So when I'm in outline view, you can see that the original shapes are still just showing the outlines, while these ones now are showing those shapes that were created with the stroke. So if I now switch to the eraser tool and I hold down the Alt key, I can easily cut out pieces from the text, and I would recommend, if you are doing this technique, to use a shape instead of just randomly cutting out with the eraser tool. Of course, you can also just draw with the eraser tool, but that would be even worse because it will create these angles. However, angles could work as well. So angle could look nice as long as it's consistent. But what I would recommend to do is to draw a shape. I'm just going to draw a small shape like this and maybe set it to red. And then that could be the shape that we use. So I'm just going to put it on a couple of areas. So we plan where we want those interruptions to be. And by using the same shape, I guarantee that it's always going to be the same size. So now if I select all of these things together, I can just use the shape builder tool and hold down Alt or Option key and just cut over those bits. And then you can see this will assure that those gaps between the details will always be exactly the same size. Now, since this the way that we outline the text has these nice curves on them, and that works quite well for neon, you can also achieve the same aesthetic by using the direct selection tool, highlighting the endpoints that you created, and just use the corner widgets and create curved lines. It doesn't have to go all the way. It can also be like this. It's completely up to you what aesthetic you feel like works best, but you can see how quickly and easily we can do this on all of these designs here that we just created. So it's as simple as that. Now, of course, extra attention will have to be placed on these counters, so the little smaller details inside, especially if they are not outlined like an actual neon light with the same thickness. Here, this has to be probably dealt with separately. So if I double click until I have that accessed, I can separate this out by cutting it out. Just select this detail here, place it back in, and then use the same 5-point stroke on it. And in this case, maybe we can use the again the outside, or maybe centered. Yeah, like centered one is probably still works fine. So yeah, but these are minor details. I don't want to waste more time on going through that. What's also important is how you achieve the glow effect. That's something that you do in the appearance panel, and I'm going to show you an example in a bit, but for now I just wanted to say that this is the method that you can use to turn any font that you feel like would work well into a neon style. And yeah, if I just do maybe just a quick demonstration here, I can drop a colored shape in the background, and it could be any color. I'm intentionally using like a nice vibrant color. And if we select this design, I'm just gonna press Command, select every element of it, and then press Command 8. That's going to create a compound path. Actually, this one has to be first expanded as well. And then now select everything. Command 8 is going to create a single compound shape from it. Right there, we can see it's a single object. It's easier to use the appearance panel this way. And then all we have to do is to change the fill to white. And then we can just add a nice little outer glow on this. And if we wanted to, we could use a color like that same color that's in the background, or maybe a brighter version of that. And then we can maybe increase the blur a bit, like 3 points or 3 millimeters. Can increase the opacity or visibility of it. If I click away, we can already see this working. So if I just go back before the neon effect, or before the outer glow and after the outer glow. And by the way, when you use the appearance panel, you can add multiple glows on top of the same object, and you can stack them on top of each other. Just make sure you say apply new effect. And then of course, what you want to do in this case, I'm going to change this to maybe yellow just to have some variety, and then reduce the opacity. And I think what happened here is that this outer glow, let me just see. Oh yeah, so when you duplicate outer glow on top of each other, sometimes what happens is that it looks completely different than what you would expect, and that's because you're working in CMYK, and CMYK color modes can't fully like replicate what you would normally see in RGB, but it's important that we have to work in CMYK because this is for print, and this is again a challenging ask, that we have to try to create these glowing neon lights within CMYK format, because it doesn't always work well in CMYK. So all the blend modes that you would normally use, like in Photoshop, especially in RGB, you can do lots of fancy light effects and stuff like that. That in CMYK sometimes it's hard to recreate. So you can already run into issues like this where it behaves completely differently to what you would expect. Like even when I move these around, it's a bit strange. Let's just change the color, make it a bit darker, and maybe reduce the intensity down. So if I do 50 with a smaller blur on it, and then the other one we will reduce down to 20. Yeah, that's starting to look more interesting. So when I go back here, I can turn off both effects, and then I just undo to go back and put them back on. Yeah, it's starting to look a bit more interesting, but it still takes a lot of experimentation to get the right appearance for your text. But essentially, these are the steps that you would probably need to achieve that neon glowing product title. And so again, important, it has to be the product title. Okay, so next step or next important demo that I wanted to do is how to achieve that reptilian texture, abstract texture that the client likes. So for this one, what I did was to go into, well, first we can go on stock sites like Freepik, and we can type in reptilian scaly pattern, right? And we would find a lot of good ones, and we could utilize these, maybe just their outlines or parts of it we can use. By the way, notice how most of the nice looking, like photorealistic looking textures, they are all generated by AI. We can, of course, in Freepik, I like the fact that we can say exclude AI generated images, so that way these are all the handmade textures that we will find, and many of these would be repeatable or seamless, which is good. But the client told me that he actually prefers more random patterns, so the ones that feel a bit more organic than very like structured. So yeah, I mean, you could go down this route and search on sites like Freepik, or you could draw them manually. Manually drawing is probably like a very good direction that you can follow. And in Illustrator, there is actually a very cool technique that you can utilize to create seamless patterns. All you have to do is to draw a square, and then the square itself you can set to background color. So let's just use, I'm gonna use a different color now, maybe this one. All right, and then what we do is drop this into the swatches panel, and when you double click on this swatch, you will see this actually is turned into a pattern swatch already, simply just the fact that we dropped it in there. And then you can use something like the blob brush tool and set it to black, and you can start drawing your pattern. Now once you draw them, the cool thing about this is that it's already going to try to do a seamless pattern. what you have to just make sure that you are drawing on the right side. So the overlap has to be set up the way that you're drawing. So in this case, if I try to draw on the left, I just have to make sure the overlap is set up on this icon here. The same thing, if I draw at the bottom a shape, now it works, but if this was set the other way, then it wouldn't work. So these have to be set up the right way. And again, remember, if you start drawing on the bottom edge, don't draw on the top edge. Same thing, if you start drawing on the left edge, don't end up drawing on the right edge, because that will again create an overlap problem. So I could just easily draw over this pattern, and you can see we can very quickly create an abstract pattern, so we don't have to rely on anything stock based. We can just do this manually, and of course you can reference things, and you can use live trace if you want, but sometimes the best thing to do is to just use a brush and a bit of time and effort and create something more original. So I'm not going to continue this, because I guess you can imagine how this would work. If I just press done, we already have something that could be used on any shape. So if I select a bigger shape, you see how this works. And the best thing about pattern swatches in Illustrator is that you can always go back and make changes to its source by double clicking on the swatch thumbnail. So we can come back here, change the background color if we wanted to, or we could completely remove the background color. So if I just set that to none, sorry, let's select this, and then we just select that and set it to none. We could even have it transparent like this. If I say done, you see now it doesn't have the background color included. And one important option that some people are not familiar with is that in the transform panel, in the drop down, there is an option for deciding whether you want to transform both the pattern and the object, or just one of the two. So if I set it to transform both, what that means is whenever I scale things up, it's going to scale the object and the pattern inside it at the same time. However, if I go back and change this to transform the object only, that means the pattern is not going to be affected. So it's almost like a mask through which we are seeing the repeated pattern that's created in the background. Hope that makes sense. So yeah, that's basically how you create patterns in Illustrator. And another technique that you can do for creating patterns is to utilize generative AI. And now I haven't tried this in Firefly, but we can just jump into Firefly just to see how it would work. So what I'm going to do here, I want to generate an image, reptilian, scaly pattern. The reason I'm showing Firefly because it's free. Well, to a certain extent, you can generate a few things for free. But after that, it's connected to generative credits. So if I just go in and say generate, I think it should already work like this. Let's click OK. Yeah, and then if I say abstract illustrated reptilian scaly pattern, we'll see another set, because the other one is obviously too realistic. Okay, it's still going down on the same route. I feel like if we chose maybe a reference as a compositional reference, we want stylistic reference. So if I just choose a reference from this one, we could obviously upload our own reference as well. That would help in this case, but I'm just checking if there's anything similar to what we need. Maybe these simple clouds could be a style reference. Let's see what happens. Okay, there you go. It's starting to look already better. So something like this is starting to look something that we could utilize. So if I upscale this, we can see how that, like a a higher resolution version of that could look like. But this is Firefly. I personally prefer to use Midjourney. Not many people would have access to Midjourney, but whoever has a subscription, Midjourney has a bit more subtle ways of refining the generated results. And you can see I was experimenting yesterday when I was while I was talking to the client, and we ended up generating these style, or this again, it's just simply the prompt was lizard, scaly pattern, illustration, abstract, and I created a quick reference for it that was used. And then, yeah, the client said that he likes something like this, which you can't really tell what it is. It could be a lot of different things, but yeah, it's less. It's a bit more vague. But then there's a couple of other interesting ones here with a bit more variety between larger and smaller details. But one important thing to mention here is if you're creating these or generating these textures, one thing to maybe keep in mind is that you want to keep them low contrast. So you don't want to create too much contrast because it will make it hard to put text on top of them. And I actually did I did a little bit more detailed version while I was on the call with the client, and we created these quick mock-ups and tests just to see how the neon light and the text could work. Sorry, neon light and the texture, the scaly texture, could work together, and also have that vibrant, bright colors in the background. And these are the tests that we came up with. In this case, I did the neon effect on the word keto. But remember, again, I don't want to confuse anyone. It's more important to have this effect on the product name. So what's the product name? Going back here, it's these: the aluminum foil, plastic wrap, parchment paper, and again, parchment paper on the other one as well. So while the client don't mind, he said he doesn't mind if the neon effect is also used on the brand, the logo itself, but there it's less important. That can be just simply white or a colored detail, while the neon effect should be used on the product name, like I did here in this demo for the plastic wrap. Okay, so the more important thing here in this example is just, you can see that the texture can still be visible, but without being too prominent in this example. So it gets a little bit more faded in the background, or it can be dominant as long as you make sure that your text stands out. And an easy way is obviously always to use a backdrop on your text if it's smaller text. But if it's a bigger text that really has enough thickness and enough effects around them, like here you can see I used 2 outer glow effects similarly to what I've done earlier, then it works. And one additional thing that I've also done here is I actually placed this big elliptical shape behind the text, which if I move that away, it starts to end up being a little bit hard to read again. But if I place this back there, it still shows the design quite nicely. I mean, you still see the texture behind the text, but it makes it more legible, right? So just a simple technique. That shape, by the way, is just simply blurred out, and I believe it is using a normal opacity just reduced to 70%. So simple techniques like that. Now the client also mentioned this, that neon effect could also be used for like a frame around the packaging, similarly to what you can see here. Of course, the aspect ratio of the actual boxes would be wider, but you can imagine that working like this. So the same neon aesthetic, he quite like to see that similarly to what you see here. And it's important to mention that this is just a demonstration. This is not something that you have to follow to the dot, or to replicate exactly and trying to replicate what I've done here. This is more just a guide to something that the client really liked. So he said, yeah, this is more the direction that he had, or the vision that he had for these products. So use this more as an inspiration, and of course the techniques and the workflow that I showed here hopefully will be useful, but don't feel restricted by anything that I showed. Of course, you can come up with your own workflows, and the client would still like to see original ideas and unique ideas as long as these requirements are met. So neon light on the product names, so plastic wrap, aluminum foil, and parchment paper. The logo to be more simple, perhaps using some tribal elements on it, and then vivid color backgrounds based on the brief. So I'm just going to jump back to the brief here. Remember that we have these colors mentioned here in the brief, so each of these would have the color written on the top. So neon red, neon teal, neon violet, and neon green were the colors, and you can see a few of these colors that he liked here in the references. And by the way, this is the main reference for the scaly pattern, this abstract scaly pattern that the client really liked, and that should be like a key visual for getting the texture right, or the pattern right. And then what else? The neon, the scaly texture, and the vibrant color in the background. If you can incorporate these in a good balance, trying to balance these out without affecting legibility of the text, making it interesting, and obviously creating some variety between the products. So for instance, in this case, if I had two variations for the parchment paper, I'm just going to do a quick copy here of this design, and I went in. By the way, notice how simply by duplicating this, because I have that option for the pattern not to be scaled or transformed, I will end up accidentally having a different portion of that pattern visible, which is quite cool as well. So you can reposition it and find the right place for it within the pattern. But if I just went in here and gone into the layers and selected this and used the gradient tool, I could just go in and adjust these a bit, and we already have a nice variant for the colors. And then we could just have the outline. I think in this case we have, yeah, the group there. Oh, is it this one? Not sure why I can't select I can't see the effect of that. Maybe it's this one. Yeah. No. For some reason I can't find the shape that I used for the glow effect. There it is. That's the stroke. And where is the glow? I probably added the glow on the group. So if this is the one, as the group. I can't find where that effect is now. It doesn't matter. But yeah, if I set this up correctly, I would have easy access to change the effect on the outlines. Maybe this one can be easier. Yeah, this one can be changed easier. So if I just come in here, it has a white outer glow and this red outer glow. I would just change to a bluish glow like that, and then it already starts to work quite nicely and separately. So yeah, I just removed that for now, so you can imagine how it would work. But yeah, so that's really all I wanted to show here, and I don't want to influence you more than this. So I already spent enough time, I think, going through this. So we will be updating the brief with these additional comments by the client. So expect that to be showing up here. But the rest will stay the same, so we won't add anything else here. And hopefully and obviously we will be updating the deadline as well. Hopefully many of those who took part will be able to resubmit their work. And also, if you haven't started working on these designs with the more detailed instructions now, there is still chance and there's still enough time to take part in this contest. So we are obviously, the contest is open for anyone new to enter as well. And then in terms of the announcement of the final winners, or the winner of the contest, I haven't decided whether we will be doing another live session here on YouTube or not. What I recommend for everyone who's taking part in this contest is to keep an eye on our social media for announcements, and also keep an eye on the website where we announce the contests. We will decide whether we do a live event or not. I would like to do a live event, even if it's a shorter one. It might just end up being like less than an hour, but we haven't decided on this. So just keep an eye on the updates. If you are on our newsletter, you will find out about this anyway. I'm just going to show you quickly. If you are on the website, all you have to do is to go to free learning, design contests, and then here is a quick and easy form. You can use this to sign up to our newsletter to hear about the contests in general. So yeah, that's one way of joining. And of course, you can also go to the freebies under free learning and just get any of these guides or even free courses that we have. There's a lot of useful free stuff here, like our survival kit, or the illustration course, free course, or the portfolio building course. Any of these that you enroll to, you will get updates on anything that we do. So that's a good way to keep up to date. Inaki is asking if I can give some feedback. Yes, I can. So your design, I'm just going to open your presentation. Yeah, you've done a nice job with your research. I like the way you explained how the patterns work. I really like this, and I like the font as well. By the way, this font is really cool, and I liked this direction, this one. And again, your logo is cool. I think you've done a really good job on the logo, to be honest. I feel like, yeah, the main feedback of the client was that he liked the fact that you managed to use these vibrant neon style colors as the backdrop, but the text itself got very hard to read because it's sort of lost on top of this strong texture behind it. So, and yeah, you use the neon effect on them, but the font you use for the product title is too thin for the neon effect to work. And instead of having the double line neon effect, it would have made sense just to have a single outline. And that's a useful feedback for everyone else. Instead of doing a double line neon, that makes the legibility lower. Just use a single line neon effect for the text. So yeah, like in this case, this is yeah, I mean it's in a way similar. This is the closest one to what I created. The main difference is that the text is just too small and like it's not thick enough, the original font that you used, while that other font you used on the logo, that could work actually really well. So instead of that being outlined, this could be just simply set to be filled with white or some other color, and then just use the neon effect on the actual title, on the name of the product. And try to focus more on the reptilian texture in the background instead of the tribal pattern, because you already incorporated the tribal pattern in the logo. It's enough. So it's just a subtle hint to that, while the reptilian texture is more important for the client. So yeah, but other than that, you've done a very good job. I really like your work, and that's why I displayed it here in these examples. Okay, so one final thing before we wrap up, I wanted to mention, and some of you may have noticed that we have a link on top of the chat, a highlighted comment, or a highlighted chat pinned on the top with a link. But that link is also available in the description below about our next contest. So if you don't want to join this contest, the currently still running contest with the kitchen products, we actually already have the next contest available, which is probably even more exciting. I mean, this was already an interesting project, but the next one, I'm really looking forward to seeing what everyone's going to do. This is something that we've been planning for a while. This time we will be working again with a real client, but this is a charity. So this is the charity is called Amazon Aid, and it's a series of educational posters that needs to be designed and created for a curriculum called the River of Gold, which is based on a documentary that you can find a link to here in the brief, and I highly recommend to watch that to better understand the themes and the topics that are discussed in the curriculum. But the curriculum is broken down into 6 lessons, and the task is to design the master poster that includes all 6 topics with the following copy that is included here. You can either just use one of these or both of them, but essentially you need to have that master poster that basically is like you can consider it like a table of contents of the 6 lessons inside the whole curriculum. And these posters would be, by the way, portrait format posters, 24 by 36 inch size. We created a Photoshop template that you can download. You are not restricted to use Photoshop. You can use Illustrator, InDesign, or any other applications, but there is a Photoshop template here that you can use, but the information is also included here on the left. And the target audience is for students in school, and the task is to do the master poster and 2 additional posters, and that's completely up to you which 2 lessons you want to pick. So out of the 6 lessons, like the impact of gold mining, rainforest ecology, biodiversity of the Amazon, hydrological cycles, climate change, and the indigenous communities, you can pick 2 of these topics and then do 2 additional posters, so 1 for each of the lessons that you picked. So in total, you will have to create 3 posters. 1, the master poster, and the 2 additional lesson posters picked out of the 6 available ones. And in terms of style, I presented a few visual directions and discussed these with the client, Amazon Aid in this case, and they approved these. So these could be used as inspiration. There's like montage, more map-based style, or more typography-based style, or a bit more like infographic style. Any of these can be used, or even a mixture of these can be used, or anything you feel like works better for this project. It's important that this has to be a little bit more illustrative, although you can also utilize photographs as long as you have the license to use them, or they are royalty free. And that's again very important because it's for a real project. These things will be printed and used all over the world. So there's a couple of restrictions that you need to check which is listed here. I'm not going to go into detail on it. It's all written down in the brief. The deadline for this is the 18th of April, and we will be doing the live stream, reviewing it and announcing the winners on the 22nd of April, which is Earth Day. So it's a nice alignment there. Now, because again it's for a real client, there might be a need for extending the contest if the entries are not satisfactory enough. But I have high hopes for this. It's a little bit more looser, this brief. There's more room for creativity and exploration. There's not much restriction on the visual style. There's more information on the curriculum on the top from which you can understand more. And obviously the documentary is highly recommended to watch if you want to take part in this. It's around an hour to hour long, so not that long to watch. Okay, so yes, so a question, the master poster, I explain it here in the brief. It needs to showcase all 6 lessons of the curriculum. So all the 6 themes that are described for the curriculum that you can see here needs to be somehow incorporated in that design. So it could be either split up into 6 sections if you want and clearly divided, or it could be more like a montage which will have bits of each of them, and maybe you can have the text for each of the lessons, like the actual titles, rainforest ecology, where that is mentioned or displayed in the poster, impact of gold mining in another section where you are displaying that. Or if your illustrations or designs are more obvious, then you don't even have to include the titles of the lessons. You just have to use the copy that was created for the master poster, which is education that changes lives, and then the uncover illicit gold mining's impact and the fight to save the Amazon rainforest. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Cool. So what's the winner? What will the winner get? They will get, for this one, there is no monetary reward because this is for a charity, but we will be doing the same prizes as before, having access to our pro membership, and we will be also giving the MILANOTE subscription. That will, just like before, and there might be some more prizes revealed. Again, we haven't finalized the contest page. We will have it on our website. That will be soon available, but we just wanted to make sure the brief is already available to give you as much time as possible, close to a month, to work on this project. And you already have the link here to submit your designs like before. We increased the file size to 100 megabytes because we heard that as a feedback from our past entries that it was quite restrictive to have to reduce the PDF to 10 megabytes. So we increased it a bit in this case. But yeah, so hopefully that makes sense. And oh, by the way, it's important to mention that the winner in this case will be featured by the charity, and the winner's name will be placed on the poster. So it will be something that will be printed and showcased in many places, and the charity obviously is going to credit the winner on the posters directly. So there will be your name on the posters, and it will be an amazing piece that you can include in your portfolio, where you worked with a real charity on a global conservation project, which is it's an amazing thing to showcase in your portfolio. It could be I feel like it's an amazing opportunity. I would love to take part in this if I found this project somewhere else. But yeah, so can't wait to see what you will all do with this. Again, we will share more information about this in the upcoming days. For now, we want all of you who took part already in the current brief with the kitchen products to refine your work in the next couple of days, and hopefully that will, like 10 days should be enough time to resubmit your work. And really looking forward to the second round. We will keep you all updated on how we will announce the winners, and the reward, the $1,500, is still on the table. The client said that he has high hopes that with this additional feedback and a bit of revision and a bit of like guidance from him and me, many of you will get an amazing result, and some amazing designs will come in. So we can't wait to see it. And let me just have a quick look on the chat if there's any questions that were not answered. Can we put this work into our portfolio? Peter is asking. Yes, of course. If the question was about the keto project, of course you can. So there's no restriction on that. You can say that you took part in a contest for an actual client with these products, and this was your work that you created. So there is no restriction on that, as long as you credit or mention that this is a real project for a real client. And if you don't win the project, it's worth mentioning that you took part in the contest, but your design in the end wasn't chosen for it. Or if you were the winner, then definitely it's worth mentioning that. So yeah, cool, awesome. Thank you so much for everyone's time. Thank you for joining me. I hope you found this session useful. And don't forget that we will be live again in a couple of days' time. On Friday, I believe, we are doing the next live stream. We will be doing another co-design workshop where I will be designing, in this time, a poster live. That could be a great reference to how to tackle this new brief that we have for Amazon 8. So I will be working on a poster design for a supermarket. This is a fictional brief that I will be following, a brief that we have from our pro membership, but I'm really looking forward to that. So that's on the 28th of March, I believe. Yes, 28th of March, at the same time as today's stream. So I hope you will be able to join me then. And good luck for the contests, whichever you are working on. Good luck, and I will see you all hopefully soon. Have a great rest of your day, and bye for now.